Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows that Foxconn Industrial Internet is considering the integration of a new suite of Internet of Things, (IoT) sensors into its manufacturing facilities to enhance operational efficiency. These sensors will collect real-time data on machine performance, environmental conditions, and potentially employee movement within designated work zones. Before full-scale deployment, what is the most appropriate and compliant course of action to ensure data privacy and security? Option A. Obtain explicit consent from all employees whose movements might be tracked by the sensors, without conducting a broader assessment of data handling practices. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks associated with the data collection and processing activities of the IoT sensors. Option C. Implement basic data anonymization techniques on the collected sensor data before it is stored, assuming this adequately addresses privacy concerns. Option D. Proceed with the deployment of the IoT sensors, relying on existing IT security protocols to safeguard the collected data, as the primary goal is operational efficiency. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks associated with the data collection and processing activities of the IoT sensors. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between rapid technological deployment and the need for robust data privacy and security, especially within the context of industrial Internet solutions. Foxconn Industrial Internet operates in a highly regulated environment where data handling is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing innovation and market competitiveness with strict adherence to data protection principles and potential legal liabilities. Careful judgment is required to ensure that new technologies do not inadvertently compromise user privacy or expose sensitive operational data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which prioritizes a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) before deploying new IoT devices, represents best professional practice. This aligns with regulatory frameworks such as the General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR), if the exam jurisdiction is European, or similar data protection laws in other relevant jurisdictions. A DPIA is a systematic process to identify and minimize the data protection risks of a project or policy. It ensures that privacy considerations are embedded into the design of systems and processes from the outset, thereby preventing potential breaches and ensuring compliance with legal obligations regarding data processing, consent, and security. This proactive approach demonstrates a commitment to ethical data stewardship and regulatory compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with deployment based solely on the perceived technical benefits and cost-effectiveness, without a formal privacy assessment. This approach fails to acknowledge the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal data, which could lead to significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It violates the principle of data protection by design and by default, which is a cornerstone of modern data privacy regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on general IT security measures without specifically addressing the unique privacy risks introduced by IoT devices. While general security is important, IoT devices often collect more granular and sensitive data, requiring specialized privacy considerations beyond standard cybersecurity protocols. This oversight could lead to non-compliance with specific data protection requirements related to the types of data collected and how it is used, processed, and stored. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that anonymizing data at the collection stage is sufficient without further review. While anonymization is a valuable technique, its effectiveness can be compromised by re-identification risks, especially when combined with other datasets. A thorough DPIA would assess the robustness of the anonymization techniques and consider potential re-identification risks in the context of the specific data collected and its intended use. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data privacy and security. This involves identifying potential privacy risks early in the development lifecycle, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate mitigation measures. A structured process, such as a DPIA, provides a framework for this assessment. When faced with new technologies, professionals should ask, what data is being collected? Who has access to it? How is it being used and stored? What are the potential privacy implications for individuals? What are the legal requirements governing this data? By systematically addressing these questions, professionals can make informed decisions that balance innovation with compliance and ethical responsibility. Question 2. Investigation of the most effective strategy for integrating advanced AI-driven predictive maintenance algorithms into Foxconn Industrial Internet's manufacturing processes, considering the need to protect sensitive operational data and comply with relevant data security and privacy regulations. Option A. Implement a phased rollout of the AI algorithms, starting with a pilot program in a controlled environment, accompanied by a comprehensive data security risk assessment and the deployment of robust encryption and access control mechanisms for all data processed by the AI. Option B. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the AI algorithms across all manufacturing lines to maximize efficiency gains, with a plan to address data security concerns retrospectively as they arise. Option C. Rely exclusively on the security features provided by the AI software vendor, assuming their solutions are inherently compliant with all applicable data protection laws. Option D. Deploy the AI algorithms without extensive data security reviews, focusing solely on the performance metrics of the AI in predicting equipment failures. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased rollout of the AI algorithms, starting with a pilot program in a controlled environment, accompanied by a comprehensive data security risk assessment and the deployment of robust encryption and access control mechanisms for all data processed by the AI. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire for rapid innovation and the imperative to maintain robust data security and privacy, particularly within the context of industrial Internet solutions. Foxconn Industrial Internet operates in a highly regulated environment where the protection of sensitive operational data, intellectual property, and customer information is paramount. Navigating this requires a nuanced understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, which in this context is assumed to be aligned with general principles of data protection and cybersecurity relevant to technology manufacturing and industrial operations. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of advanced data analytics and AI-driven insights with the potential risks of data breaches, unauthorized access, and non-compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology that aligns with established cybersecurity principles and regulatory expectations. By conducting a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential vulnerabilities, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational safeguards, professionals demonstrate due diligence and a commitment to protecting data assets. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining trust with stakeholders, ensuring business continuity, and avoiding significant financial and reputational damage that can arise from security incidents. Adherence to regulatory requirements, such as those pertaining to data privacy and cybersecurity, is not merely a compliance obligation, but a fundamental aspect of responsible business conduct. Incorrect approaches fail to meet professional standards and expose the organization to significant regulatory and ethical risks. One incorrect approach might involve a hasty deployment of AI without adequate security vetting. This would be a failure to comply with general data protection principles that mandate security by design and by default. It could lead to the inadvertent exposure of sensitive data, violating privacy regulations, and potentially incurring substantial fines. Another incorrect approach could be to ignore potential vulnerabilities identified during development, assuming they are minor or unlikely to be exploited. This demonstrates a disregard for risk management best practices and a failure to uphold the duty of care owed to data subjects and the organization itself. Such negligence can result in severe breaches, leading to legal repercussions and a loss of public confidence. A third incorrect approach might be to rely solely on vendor-provided security solutions without independent verification or integration into the organization's broader security framework. This can create blind spots and leave critical systems unprotected, violating the principle of comprehensive security management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the scope and objectives of the project, including the data involved and its sensitivity. Second, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities, considering both technical and human factors. Third, Consult relevant regulatory frameworks and internal policies to ensure compliance. Fourth, design and implement security controls that are proportionate to the identified risks, employing a defense-in-depth strategy. Fifth, establish robust monitoring and incident response mechanisms. Finally, regularly review and update security measures in response to evolving threats and technological advancements. This iterative process ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and ethically. Question 3. What factors determine the ethical and legal permissibility of using customer data collected through EOT devices for predictive maintenance analytics within a manufacturing context, considering potential privacy implications? Option A. The internal company policy on data utilization, even if it allows for broader data aggregation and analysis beyond the initially stated purposes for which the data was collected. Option B. The clarity and specificity of the user consent obtained regarding data collection and its intended use for predictive maintenance, alongside adherence to data minimization principles and robust anonymization techniques where applicable. Option C. The technical feasibility of collecting and processing large volumes of data from EOT devices, assuming that any data collected can be used for any business purpose deemed beneficial by the company. Option D. The potential for increased operational efficiency and cost savings derived from predictive maintenance, regardless of explicit user consent or the scope of data collected. The correct answer is B. The clarity and specificity of the user consent obtained regarding data collection and its intended use for predictive maintenance, alongside adherence to data minimization principles and robust anonymization techniques where applicable. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of data privacy within a technology company like Foxconn Industrial Internet. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's legitimate business interests in data utilization for product improvement and market analysis against the fundamental rights of individuals to privacy and data protection. Misjudging this balance can lead to severe legal repercussions, reputational damage, and erosion of customer trust. The rapid evolution of technology and data collection methods further complicates this by introducing new ethical dilemmas and requiring continuous adaptation to evolving regulatory frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and transparent data governance strategy that prioritizes user consent and adheres strictly to the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation. This aligns with the spirit and letter of data protection regulations, such as those governing data privacy in the jurisdictions where Foxconn Industrial Internet operates. Obtaining explicit and informed consent before collecting and processing personal data ensures that individuals are aware of how their information will be used and have the agency to agree or disagree. Data minimization means collecting only the data that is absolutely necessary for a specific, stated purpose, thereby reducing the risk of misuse or breach. Purpose limitation ensures that data collected for one reason is not subsequently used for an unrelated purpose without further consent. This approach represents best professional practice because it builds trust, mitigates legal risks, and fosters a culture of responsible data stewardship, which is increasingly critical in the digital economy. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming that broad, generic terms of service implicitly grant permission for any data usage, even for purposes not clearly communicated to the user. This fails to meet the standard of informed consent required by many data protection laws, represents an ethical failure by prioritizing convenience and potential business gain over individual privacy rights, and a regulatory failure by potentially violating consent requirements. Another incorrect approach is to collect vast amounts of data without a clear, defined purpose, relying on the possibility of finding future uses for it. This violates the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation. Ethically, it is an overreach into user privacy, and regulatorily, it exposes the company to significant penalties for noncompliance with data protection principles that mandate specific and legitimate purposes for data processing. A third incorrect approach is to anonymize data in a way that is technically complex but not robust enough to prevent re-identification, especially when combined with other publicly available information. While anonymization is a valid technique, insufficient anonymization can lead to a false sense of security and still constitute a breach of privacy if re-identification is possible. This is both an ethical lapse and a potential regulatory failure, as many regulations consider inadequately anonymized data as still personal data. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of applicable data protection laws and ethical guidelines. This involves conducting data protection impact assessments, DPIA, for new data processing activities, clearly defining the purpose and necessity of data collection, and implementing robust consent mechanisms. Transparency with users about data collection and usage practices is paramount. Furthermore, establishing clear internal policies and providing regular training to employees on data privacy best practices are essential. When in doubt, erring on the side of caution and prioritizing user privacy over broader data utilization is the most responsible and professionally sound course of action. Question 4. When evaluating the implementation of a new AI-driven predictive maintenance system that will process operational data from manufacturing lines, what is the most appropriate initial step to ensure compliance with data governance and security regulations? Option A. Proceed with the system's deployment and address any data governance or security concerns that arise after the system is operational. Option B. Rely solely on data anonymization techniques without further investigation into their effectiveness for the specific data being processed. Option C. Assume that existing general data security protocols are sufficient for the new AI system and proceed with implementation. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, to identify and evaluate potential risks associated with the collection, processing, and storage of operational data. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, to identify and evaluate potential risks associated with the collection, processing, and storage of operational data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in industrial internet environments where rapid technological advancement and data integration are paramount. The core difficulty lies in balancing the drive for innovation and efficiency with the imperative to protect sensitive intellectual property and comply with data governance regulations. A misstep can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of competitive advantage. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential data security risks, making robust ethical and regulatory adherence crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive, risk-based assessment of data handling practices within the new AI-driven predictive maintenance system. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, which are fundamental to many regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and security, such as those that might be enforced by a body like the China Cybersecurity Administration, CAC, or similar national data protection authorities. Specifically, it requires identifying what sensitive data is being collected, how it will be processed, stored, and secured, and ensuring that all these activities comply with relevant laws regarding data localization, cross-border data transfer, and individual data rights. This approach prioritizes understanding and mitigating risks before deployment, thereby embedding compliance and security into the system's architecture. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with deployment without a thorough data impact assessment, assuming that existing general data security measures are sufficient. This fails to acknowledge the specific risks associated with AI and predictive analytics, which often involve large volumes of potentially sensitive operational or proprietary data. Such an oversight would likely violate regulation requiring specific assessments for new technologies that process personal or sensitive data and could lead to unauthorized access or misuse. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over data governance, believing that compliance can be retroactively addressed. This is a direct contravention of the by-design principle in data protection. It risks exposing the company to significant penalties for noncompliance from the outset, and could result in a breach of trust with stakeholders if sensitive data is compromised or mishandled. A third incorrect approach is to assume that anonymizing data is a universal solution without understanding the nuances of anonymization techniques and their effectiveness against sophisticated re-identification methods, especially when combined with other data sources. Inadequate anonymization can still leave data identifiable, leading to regulatory breaches and privacy violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a structured, risk-aware decision-making process. This begins with a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. The next step is to identify all potential data flows and processing activities associated with the new system. A comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, should then be conducted to identify and evaluate risks. Based on this assessment, appropriate technical and organizational measures should be implemented to mitigate identified risks and ensure compliance. Continuous monitoring and periodic reviews are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. This systematic approach ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and ethically, safeguarding both the company and its stakeholders. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that a new Foxconn Industrial Internet EOT device, designed for smart factory environments, collects and transmits sensor data that may include sensitive operational parameters. The product development team is eager to meet a critical market launch deadline. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance and ethical data handling prior to market release? Option A. Conduct a thorough, documented review of the EOT device's data collection, storage, and transmission mechanisms against all relevant data protection and industrial regulations, involving both legal and technical experts before approving the launch. Option B. Obtain a high-level legal opinion on data privacy and then proceed with the launch, assuming the legal team will flag any major issues. Option C. Rely on the general IT security certifications already held by Foxconn Industrial Internet to satisfy regulatory requirements for this specific EOT device. Option D. Proceed with the launch, documenting a plan to address any identified compliance gaps in a subsequent software update after market release. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the launch, documenting a plan to address any identified compliance gaps in a subsequent software update after market release. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid product deployment and the imperative of regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy and security. The pressure to launch a new EOT device quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass essential compliance checks, risking significant legal, financial, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with the non-negotiable requirements of regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough and documented review of the product's compliance with all applicable regulations before launch. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of post-launch issues, such as data breaches, non-compliance fines, or product recalls. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, ensuring that privacy and security are integrated into the product development lifecycle from the outset. This approach demonstrates a commitment to ethical business conduct and robust corporate governance, fostering trust with consumers and regulatory bodies. An incorrect approach that involves launching the product with a promise to address compliance issues post-launch is professionally unacceptable. This constitutes a direct violation of regulatory principles that mandate compliance at the point of market entry. It exposes the company to significant legal liabilities, including substantial fines and potential injunctions, and erodes customer trust by prioritizing speed over safety and privacy. Furthermore, it demonstrates a disregard for the ethical responsibility to protect user data. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on the legal team's initial high-level review, without engaging technical experts for a detailed assessment of the EOT device's specific data handling mechanisms, is also professionally unsound. While legal review is crucial, it may not fully grasp the technical nuances of data collection, storage, and transmission within an EOT device. This can lead to overlooking specific compliance gaps that only a combined legal and technical understanding can identify, thereby failing to meet the comprehensive requirements of data protection laws. A third incorrect approach, which is to assume that compliance with general IT security standards is sufficient for an EOT device, is also flawed. EOT devices often have unique vulnerabilities and data handling practices that require specific regulatory considerations beyond general IT security. Failing to conduct a targeted compliance assessment for the EOT device's specific functionalities and data flows can lead to non-compliance with regulations tailored to the unique risks associated with connected devices. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary team, including legal, compliance, engineering, and product development. This team should conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identify all applicable regulations, and develop a detailed compliance plan. Regular audits and reviews throughout the development lifecycle, followed by a final sign-off from all relevant departments before launch, are essential to ensure that products meet all regulatory and ethical standards. Question 6. Operational review demonstrates that Foxconn Industrial Internet is exploring the integration of advanced artificial intelligence, AI, into its manufacturing and supply chain processes to enhance efficiency and predictive maintenance. Given this context, which of the following approaches to risk assessment is most appropriate for proactively managing the potential operational disruptions and security vulnerabilities associated with this AI integration? Option A. Prioritize the rapid implementation of AI solutions to gain a competitive advantage, deferring detailed risk assessment until after the systems are operational and any issues arise. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the potential cost savings and efficiency gains of AI, without dedicating specific resources to identifying and mitigating AI-specific risks. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically identifies and evaluates the unique risks posed by AI, including potential biases, emergent behaviors, and cybersecurity threats, and develops tailored mitigation strategies before full-scale deployment. Option D. Rely on existing, general operational risk assessment frameworks and historical incident data, assuming they are sufficient to cover any new risks introduced by AI. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically identifies and evaluates the unique risks posed by AI, including potential biases, emergent behaviors, and cybersecurity threats, and develops tailored mitigation strategies before full-scale deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent uncertainty in predicting the impact of emerging technologies on operational risk. The rapid evolution of AI, coupled with its integration into industrial processes, creates a dynamic risk landscape. A key challenge is balancing the potential benefits of AI with the unknown risks it might introduce, requiring a proactive and adaptable risk assessment approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a forward-looking risk assessment that explicitly considers the potential impact of AI on existing and future operational processes. This aligns with best professional practice by acknowledging the evolving nature of technology and its associated risks. It emphasizes proactive identification of potential vulnerabilities, the development of mitigation strategies before widespread deployment, and continuous monitoring. This approach is ethically sound, as it prioritizes the safety and integrity of operations and stakeholders by anticipating and addressing potential harm. It also aligns with the spirit of regulatory frameworks that encourage robust risk management and due diligence in adopting new technologies. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on historical data and past incidents. This fails to account for the novel risks introduced by AI, which may not have historical precedents. It represents a regulatory failure by not adhering to principles of forward-looking risk assessment, and a potential ethical failure by not adequately protecting against new, unforeseen dangers. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the need for specific AI risk assessment, assuming existing risk management frameworks are sufficient. This is a significant professional and regulatory oversight. It ignores the unique characteristics of AI, such as its potential for emergent behavior, bias, and complex interdependencies, which may not be adequately covered by traditional risk models. Ethically, this approach could lead to a failure to protect against AI-specific harms. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the speed of AI adoption over thorough risk assessment. While efficiency is important, this approach creates a significant regulatory risk by potentially bypassing necessary controls and compliance checks. It is an ethical failure as it prioritizes business objectives over the safety and security of operations and individuals who might be affected by inadequately assessed AI risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured yet flexible risk assessment process. This involves 1. Identifying potential AI applications and their intended use cases. 2. Brainstorming potential AI-related risks across various categories, e.g., technical, operational, ethical, security. 3. Evaluating the likelihood and impact of these identified risks. 4. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. 5. Establishing mechanisms for ongoing monitoring, review, and adaptation of the risk assessment as AI technology and its application evolve. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains relevant and effective in a rapidly changing technological environment. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates that the existing risk assessment process for new technology adoption has a significant gap in identifying potential data privacy implications. While the current process mandates a review of operational and security risks, it lacks a specific, mandatory step to evaluate compliance with data protection regulations. Which of the following is the most appropriate approach to address this identified gap? Option A. Instruct the IT department to informally flag any technology that might involve personal data during their existing security review, relying on their discretion to assess privacy risks. Option B. Prioritize cost savings in the technology adoption process, assuming that robust security measures will inherently cover most data privacy concerns. Option C. Update the risk assessment framework to include a mandatory data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) as a distinct phase for all new technology adoption proposals, ensuring it is integrated with the existing operational and security risk reviews. Option D. Implement a new, separate checklist for data privacy concerns that is distributed to relevant stakeholders, but not formally integrated into the primary risk assessment workflow. The correct answer is C. Update the risk assessment framework to include a mandatory data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) as a distinct phase for all new technology adoption proposals, ensuring it is integrated with the existing operational and security risk reviews. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient risk mitigation with the imperative to maintain robust governance and compliance. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing controls that are effective without creating undue operational burdens or circumventing established risk assessment methodologies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach aligns with the company's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified control weakness through a structured and documented process. By integrating the risk assessment findings into the development of new controls, it ensures that mitigation efforts are targeted and proportionate to the identified risks. This systematic approach is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and compliance with internal policies and any relevant regulatory frameworks governing risk management and internal controls. It fosters a culture of continuous improvement and accountability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate remediation without a thorough risk reassessment fails to address the root cause of the control weakness and may lead to ineffective or misaligned controls. This could result in regulatory noncompliance if the underlying risks are not adequately understood or managed. Another incorrect approach that relies on informal or undocumented adjustments bypasses essential governance processes, making it difficult to audit, track, or ensure consistent application. This undermines the integrity of the risk management framework and can lead to unforeseen consequences or a false sense of security. A third incorrect approach that overemphasizes cost reduction at the expense of control effectiveness risks creating new vulnerabilities or failing to adequately mitigate existing ones, potentially leading to significant financial or reputational damage and contravening the principle of prudent risk management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the identified risk and its potential impact. This involves evaluating the effectiveness of existing controls and determining the root cause of any deficiencies. The next step is to identify and evaluate potential mitigation strategies, considering their feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and alignment with the company's risk appetite and regulatory requirements. The chosen strategy should be documented, implemented, and subsequently monitored for effectiveness. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains dynamic and responsive to evolving threats and business needs. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the rapid deployment of new industrial Internet features is being hampered by lengthy security review processes, leading to calls for streamlining these checks. Which approach best balances the need for speed with robust data protection and regulatory compliance? Option A. Integrate iterative security reviews and vulnerability assessments at each stage of the development lifecycle, from design to deployment. Option B. Rely exclusively on the development team's self-assessment of security for all new features. Option C. Defer comprehensive security testing until after the feature has been deployed to the production environment. Option D. Implement security measures only in direct response to confirmed security incidents. The correct answer is A. Integrate iterative security reviews and vulnerability assessments at each stage of the development lifecycle, from design to deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for rapid innovation and market responsiveness with the imperative to maintain robust data security and privacy controls. The pressure to deploy new features quickly can lead to shortcuts in security testing and validation, potentially exposing sensitive customer or proprietary data. The professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks without unduly stifling the development lifecycle. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a structured and iterative security review integrated into the development pipeline. This aligns with best practices in secure software development lifecycle (SSDLC) methodologies, which are increasingly mandated or strongly recommended by regulatory frameworks governing data protection and cybersecurity. By embedding security checks at each stage, potential vulnerabilities are identified and addressed early, reducing the cost and impact of remediation. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to data integrity and confidentiality, fulfilling ethical obligations and regulatory requirements such as those found in data privacy laws that mandate reasonable security measures. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves deferring comprehensive security testing until after the feature is deployed. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are foundational to many data protection regulations. Such a delay increases the likelihood of data breaches, leading to potential fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It also fails to meet the reasonable security standards often stipulated in legal frameworks, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the development team's self-assessment of security. This is problematic because development teams, while skilled in coding, may lack specialized cybersecurity expertise. This reliance creates a conflict of interest and an inherent blind spot, increasing the risk of overlooking critical vulnerabilities. Ethically, it fails to ensure an independent and objective assessment of security risks, which is crucial for protecting stakeholders. From a regulatory perspective, it may not satisfy requirements for independent security audits or assessments where such are mandated. A third incorrect approach is to implement security measures only in response to identified incidents. This reactive strategy is a clear failure of due diligence and risk management. It implies that security is an afterthought rather than a core component of product development. Many data protection regulations require organizations to implement proactive measures to prevent breaches, not just to react to them. This approach is ethically questionable as it prioritizes expediency over the safety of data and users, and it is legally indefensible when breaches occur due to preventable vulnerabilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, integrating security considerations from the initial design phase through to deployment and ongoing maintenance. This involves establishing clear security requirements, conducting regular threat modeling, performing thorough security testing, including penetration testing and code reviews, and implementing continuous monitoring. Collaboration between development, security, and legal/compliance teams is essential to ensure that all aspects of data protection and regulatory compliance are addressed. When faced with competing priorities, professionals must advocate for security best practices, clearly articulating the risks associated with shortcuts and the benefits of a proactive, integrated security posture. Question 9. Benchmark analysis indicates that Foxconn Industrial Internet is considering the adoption of a new, cutting-edge Industrial Internet of Things (IoT) platform to enhance manufacturing efficiency. The proposed platform promises significant advancements in real-time data collection and predictive maintenance. However, the integration involves connecting numerous devices across the factory floor, potentially exposing sensitive operational data. Which approach best balances the drive for innovation with the imperative to safeguard data and maintain regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately deploy the IoT platform to gain a competitive edge, relying on the vendor's security certifications and assuming internal IT security protocols will suffice. Option B. Focus solely on the technical capabilities and cost-effectiveness of the IEOT platform, deferring any security or compliance considerations until after the system is fully operational and any issues arise. Option C. Prioritize the deployment of the IEOT platform for non-critical operations first, and only after a period of successful operation, consider its application to more sensitive areas, without a formal pre-deployment security and compliance review. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, including a thorough review of data privacy implications, security vulnerabilities, and alignment with Foxconn Industrial Internet's IT security policies and relevant industry regulations, before proceeding with full deployment. The correct answer is A. Immediately deploy the IEOT platform to gain a competitive edge, relying on the vendor's security certifications and assuming internal IT security protocols will suffice. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to quickly integrate new technology for competitive advantage and the imperative to ensure robust data security and compliance with Foxconn Industrial Internet's internal policies and relevant regulatory frameworks. The rapid pace of technological adoption can sometimes lead to overlooking critical security protocols and due diligence, creating vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with risk management. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based evaluation before full deployment. This aligns with the principles of responsible innovation and data governance. By conducting a thorough assessment of potential data privacy implications, security vulnerabilities, and compliance with Foxconn Industrial Internet's established IT security policies and any applicable industry-specific regulations, assuming a hypothetical jurisdiction for this exam, e.g., China's cybersecurity law or relevant industry standards for EOT, the team ensures that the new EOT platform is secure, compliant, and aligned with business objectives. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that bypasses a comprehensive security and compliance review before deployment would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Specifically, it would violate the principle of due diligence, which mandates that organizations take reasonable steps to identify and mitigate risks associated with new technologies. Such a failure could lead to non-compliance with data protection laws, exposing sensitive industrial data to unauthorized access or misuse. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the security and privacy of data handled by the industrial internet systems, potentially impacting customers, partners, and the company's operational integrity. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor assurances without independent verification would also be a failure, as it abdicates responsibility for risk assessment and could lead to the adoption of insecure or non-compliant solutions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should include identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks, evaluating existing controls, and determining the need for additional mitigation strategies. It should also involve cross-functional collaboration, bringing together IT security, legal, compliance, and business unit representatives to ensure all perspectives are considered. Prioritizing a phased rollout with pilot testing and continuous monitoring is also a key component of responsible technology adoption. Question 10. Process analysis reveals a proposal to bypass a standard safety check during a critical assembly step to save approximately 5 minutes per unit, citing a perceived low probability of failure. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Initiate a formal risk assessment and change management review to evaluate the proposed bypass, considering all potential safety and operational impacts before any decision is made. Option B. Proceed with the bypass, documenting the deviation internally as a temporary measure to improve efficiency. Option C. Reject the proposal outright, as any deviation from established safety procedures is unacceptable. Option D. Immediately implement the bypass on a trial basis to gather real-world data on its effectiveness and safety. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal risk assessment and change management review to evaluate the proposed bypass, considering all potential safety and operational impacts before any decision is made. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in industrial settings where efficiency and cost-effectiveness are paramount, but must be balanced against safety and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet production targets can lead to shortcuts or the overlooking of critical procedural steps. The professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with a seemingly minor deviation from established protocols, especially when the deviation is presented as a time-saving measure. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for cascading failures or unforeseen consequences, even from a single procedural adjustment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established change management protocols. This aligns with best professional practices in industrial operations, which are often governed by stringent safety regulations and quality management systems. In many jurisdictions, including those relevant to industrial manufacturing and technology, regulatory frameworks mandate that any deviation from approved procedures, especially those impacting safety or operational integrity, must be formally reviewed, documented, and approved. This ensures that potential risks are identified, understood, and adequately controlled before implementation. This systematic approach minimizes the likelihood of accidents, product defects, or non-compliance with industry standards and legal requirements. It fosters a culture of safety and accountability, which is a cornerstone of responsible industrial practice. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately implementing the proposed change without further review. This directly violates the principle of due diligence and regulatory compliance. Many industrial safety regulations require a formal risk assessment and management of change process for any alteration to established procedures. Failing to do so can lead to accidents, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the well-being of personnel and the integrity of operations. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the proposal outright without considering its potential benefits or the underlying reasons for the suggestion. While adherence to procedure is crucial, a rigid refusal to consider improvements can stifle innovation and lead to inefficiencies. However, in this context, the primary failure is not the dismissal itself, but the lack of a structured process to evaluate such suggestions. A proper process would involve a preliminary assessment to determine if the suggestion warrants a formal review, rather than an immediate rejection based on the fact that it deviates from the current standard. This approach fails to engage with potential process improvements in a responsible manner. A third incorrect approach is to implement the change on a trial basis without formal documentation or oversight. This creates an undocumented deviation, making it difficult to track the impact of the change, identify root causes if issues arise, and ensure consistent application. It bypasses the essential steps of risk assessment and validation required by most regulatory bodies overseeing industrial operations. This lack of formalization is a significant ethical and regulatory failing, as it undermines the transparency and accountability expected in a professional industrial environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals in industrial settings should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes safety, compliance, and operational integrity. When faced with a proposed procedural change, first step should be to understand the rationale behind the suggestion and its potential impact. This should then trigger a review against established change management protocols. If the change deviates from approved procedures, a formal risk assessment is mandatory. This assessment should consider potential safety hazards, quality implications, and regulatory compliance. Based on the risk assessment, a decision should be made regarding approval, modification, or rejection. With all steps thoroughly documented, this systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with best professional practices and regulatory requirements. Question 11. The control framework reveals that the new industrial EOT platform being considered for integration into Foxconn Industrial Internet's manufacturing operations has advanced predictive maintenance capabilities, but lacks explicit documentation on its data anonymization protocol for sensitive operational data. What is the most professionally responsible approach to proceed with the integration? Option A. Proceed with the integration, focusing on the platform's technical benefits, and address data anonymization concerns through post-deployment operational procedures. Option B. Implement the EOT platform with a temporary workaround for data anonymization, planning to develop a more robust solution in a future update cycle. Option C. Halt the integration process until a thorough review of the EOT platform's data handling mechanisms is completed, ensuring full alignment with the control framework and relevant data protection guidelines. Option D. Delegate the responsibility for assessing data anonymization to the vendor of the EOT platform, trusting their internal compliance measures. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the integration, focusing on the platform's technical benefits, and address data anonymization concerns through post-deployment operational procedures. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust, compliant implementation of new technologies within a regulated industrial internet environment. The pressure to deploy cutting-edge solutions quickly can create a temptation to bypass or inadequately address critical control framework requirements, potentially leading to significant compliance risks, security vulnerabilities, and operational disruptions. Careful judgment is required to balance speed with thoroughness. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based integration of the new EOT platform. This involves a comprehensive assessment of the platform's alignment with existing Foxconn Industrial Internet's internal control framework and relevant industry standards. It ensures that potential vulnerabilities are identified and mitigated before full deployment, thereby safeguarding data integrity, operational continuity, and compliance with any applicable regulations governing industrial control systems or data handling. This proactive stance aligns with principles of good governance and risk management, which are implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory bodies overseeing industrial operations and technology adoption. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical capabilities of the EOT platform without a thorough control framework review fails to address potential compliance gaps. This could lead to violations of data privacy regulations if personal or sensitive operational data is involved, cybersecurity mandates, or industry-specific operational standards. Another incorrect approach, which delays the control framework integration until after initial deployment, creates significant operational and regulatory risk. It means the system is operating in a potentially non-compliant state, increasing the likelihood of breaches, data loss, or regulatory penalties. This reactive stance is professionally unacceptable as it demonstrates a disregard for established risk management protocols and regulatory expectations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the full scope of the control framework and its implications for any new technology. This involves a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential points of failure or noncompliance. The next step is to evaluate the proposed technology against these identified risks and framework requirements. Prioritizing solutions that demonstrate a clear path to compliance and robust risk mitigation is crucial. If a technology appears to have significant control framework gaps, the professional decision should be to either seek modifications to the technology, implement compensating controls, or defer deployment until compliance can be assured. Question 12. The risk matrix shows a high potential for market disruption and competitive advantage if Foxconn Industrial Internet's new EOT platform can integrate real-time operational data from a prospective client's manufacturing facilities. However, the client's standard contract terms are ambiguous regarding the scope of data access and usage by third-party technology providers. An internal company policy strictly prohibits the use of client data for product development without explicit, granular consent and a robust data anonymization protocol. A senior sales executive is pushing for immediate integration to secure the lucrative contract, suggesting a learn-as-we-go approach to data handling. Option A. Immediately integrate the data, prioritizing the contract acquisition, and address any data usage ambiguities or policy deviations post-integration as they arise. Option B. Proceed with a limited, anonymized subset of the data for initial integration, assuming this mitigates most risks, and seek retrospective approval for broader data usage if the contract is secured. Option C. Inform the client that the contract cannot be finalized due to data usage ambiguities, and recommend they revise their standard terms to meet Foxconn Industrial Internet's policy requirements. Option D. Halt the integration process and initiate a formal review with the legal and compliance departments to clarify contract terms, assess regulatory compliance, and ensure adherence to internal data handling policies before any data is accessed or used. The correct answer is A. Immediately integrate the data, prioritizing the contract acquisition, and address any data usage ambiguities or policy deviations post-integration as they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma where a potential business opportunity conflicts with established company policy and potentially regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for innovation and market advantage with the imperative to adhere to ethical standards and legal frameworks. The pressure to secure a new contract, especially when framed as a significant opportunity, can cloud judgment and lead to shortcuts. The correct approach involves a thorough and transparent review process that prioritizes compliance and ethical considerations. This means engaging with the legal and compliance departments to understand the implications of the proposed data usage. It upholds professional integrity by ensuring that any data handling aligns with Foxconn Industrial Internet's policies and relevant regulations, thereby mitigating legal and reputational risks. This approach demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and data stewardship. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the data integration without proper authorization or review. This could lead to violations of data privacy regulations, such as those governing the handling of sensitive industrial data, and breach company policy regarding data security and third-party access. Such an action would expose Foxconn Industrial Internet to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust from clients and stakeholders. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay the potential risks or misrepresent the data usage to internal stakeholders to expedite the process. This constitutes a failure of transparency and could lead to decisions being made on incomplete or misleading information, ultimately undermining ethical governance. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with identifying the ethical and regulatory implications of any proposed action. This involves consulting relevant policies, seeking guidance from legal and compliance teams, and conducting a risk assessment. When faced with conflicting priorities, the principle of do no harm and adherence to established rules should take precedence. Open communication and a commitment to transparency are crucial throughout the process. Question 13. Cost-benefit analysis shows that selling anonymized customer usage data to third-party analytics firms could generate significant revenue for Foxconn Industrial Internet. However, the data, while anonymized, was collected under terms of service that did not explicitly grant permission for this type of resale. What is the most ethical and legally compliant course of action? Option A. Obtain explicit consent from customers for the resale of their anonymized data before proceeding. Option B. Resell the anonymized data immediately to capitalize on the current market opportunity and address any potential customer concerns later. Option C. Proceed with selling the anonymized data, as aggregation and anonymization render it non-personal and therefore outside the scope of privacy regulations. Option D. Sell the anonymized data, but only to partners who have strong data security protocols in place. The correct answer is A. Obtain explicit consent from customers for the resale of their anonymized data before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in business where potential financial gains conflict with data privacy obligations. The challenge lies in balancing the company's desire for market insights with the legal and ethical responsibilities to protect customer data. Rigorous cost-benefit analysis might highlight the financial advantages of using the data, but it must also account for the intangible costs of reputational damage, legal penalties, and erosion of customer trust. The correct approach prioritizes customer privacy and regulatory compliance. This aligns with the principles of data protection laws, which often mandate explicit consent for data usage and prohibit the sale or sharing of personal data without it. Adhering to these regulations demonstrates a commitment to ethical business practices and builds long-term trust with customers, which is invaluable. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with selling the aggregated data without explicit consent. This directly violates data privacy regulations, which are designed to protect individuals' personal information. Such an action would expose Foxconn Industrial Internet to significant legal repercussions, including hefty fines and potential lawsuits. Furthermore, it would severely damage the company's reputation, leading to a loss of customer confidence and potentially impacting future business opportunities. Another incorrect approach would be to argue that aggregated data is not personal data. While aggregation can anonymize data to some extent, if the data can still be linked back to individuals, even indirectly, it remains subject to privacy regulations. The ethical failure here is a misinterpretation or deliberate circumvention of the spirit of data protection laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests. Next, they must thoroughly understand all applicable laws and regulations. Then, they should identify potential courses of action and evaluate each against legal, ethical, and business objectives. In situations of conflict, prioritizing legal compliance and ethical integrity over short-term financial gains is paramount. Seeking legal counsel and consulting with ethics officers can provide further guidance. Question 14. The risk matrix shows a potential anomaly in the data processing logs related to a project a colleague is heavily involved in. Your colleague, under pressure to meet a deadline, asks you to take a quick look at the logs and help them smooth things over by potentially adjusting some entries, implying they might have made an error they want to conceal. Option A. Politely decline your colleague's request and immediately report the observed anomaly and the colleague's request to your direct supervisor or the designated ethics compliance officer, following the company's established reporting protocol. Option B. Ignore the anomaly and your colleague's request, assuming it is a minor issue that will likely be resolved without your intervention. Option C. Directly access the logs and attempt to fix the anomaly yourself, believing you can resolve it quickly and discreetly without involving others. Option D. Provide your colleague with direct access to the logs and guide them on how to make the adjustments they are suggesting, assuming they know best how to manage their project. The correct answer is A. Politely decline your colleague's request and immediately report the observed anomaly and the colleague's request to your direct supervisor or the designated ethics compliance officer, following the company's established reporting protocol. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma involving potential conflicts of interest and the obligation to maintain data integrity and confidentiality within a corporate environment. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire to assist a colleague with the imperative to uphold Foxconn Industrial Internet's ethical standards and data protection policies. The pressure to act quickly, coupled with the potential for negative repercussions for the colleague, can cloud judgment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established ethical guidelines and regulatory compliance. By reporting the observed anomaly through the designated channels, the individual ensures that any potential data breach or misuse is investigated impartially and according to protocol. This upholds the principle of accountability and prevents the individual from becoming complicit in any wrongdoing. It aligns with the ethical duty to act with integrity and to protect the company's assets and reputation. An incorrect approach that involves directly providing the colleague with the requested information would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This action bypasses established security protocols and could inadvertently facilitate a data breach or the misuse of sensitive information. It demonstrates a lack of professional judgment and a disregard for the company's internal controls and potentially external data privacy regulations. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the request and hoping the issue resolves itself, is also professionally unacceptable. This passive stance fails to address a potential ethical or security concern, leaving the company vulnerable. It can be interpreted as a dereliction of duty and a failure to act in the best interest of the organization. A third incorrect approach, attempting to fix the issue without proper authorization or investigation, carries similar risks. This could lead to further data corruption, unintended consequences, or an incomplete resolution that masks a deeper problem. It also circumvents the established procedures for handling data anomalies and security concerns. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the company's code of conduct, data privacy policies, and reporting mechanisms. When faced with an ethical dilemma, professionals should 1. Identify the core ethical issue and potential conflicts. 2. Consult relevant company policies and procedures. 3. Seek guidance from a supervisor or designated ethics officer if unsure. 4. Act in a manner that upholds integrity, transparency, and compliance with all applicable regulations. 5. Document all actions taken and communications. Question 15. When evaluating the readiness of a new industrial internet system for market launch and facing significant pressure from management to meet an aggressive deadline, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action regarding the product's testing and validation phase? Option A. Rely solely on the development team's internal assessments of the system's stability and performance without independent, rigorous external validation. Option B. Prioritize the launch by omitting any minor issues identified during testing from the final report and proceeding with the release. Option C. Proceed with the launch after conducting a limited set of critical tests, with a plan to address any discovered issues through subsequent software updates. Option D. Conduct comprehensive testing and validation, ensuring all identified critical and significant issues are resolved before the product is released to the market. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the launch after conducting a limited set of critical tests, with a plan to address any discovered issues through subsequent software updates. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the ethical obligation to ensure the safety and reliability of its products, particularly in the context of industrial internet systems, where failures can have significant consequences. The pressure to meet aggressive deadlines, coupled with the potential for competitive advantage, can create an environment where corners might be cut, leading to ethical compromises. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing these competing interests while upholding professional integrity and adhering to established standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves prioritizing rigorous testing and validation before product launch, represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with ethical principles of responsibility and due care. In the context of industrial internet systems, this approach is further reinforced by regulatory frameworks that mandate product safety and performance standards. Thorough testing ensures that potential defects are identified and rectified, minimizing the risk of harm to users, damage to property, or disruption of critical operations. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to quality and a respect for the trust placed in the company's products. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with the launch based on preliminary testing and the assumption that any issues can be addressed through post-launch updates. This fails to meet the ethical obligation of due diligence and potentially violates regulatory requirements for product safety. It prioritizes speed over safety, exposing users and the company to unacceptable risks. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay or omit any identified minor issues in the testing reports to meet the launch deadline. This constitutes a breach of professional integrity and honesty. It misrepresents the product's readiness and can lead to unforeseen problems that could have been prevented. This also undermines the credibility of the testing process and the company's commitment to quality. A further incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the assurances of the development team without independent verification through comprehensive testing. While trust is important, professional responsibility demands independent validation of critical systems. This approach abdicates the responsibility for ensuring product quality and safety, potentially leading to the release of a flawed product. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance. This involves a systematic process of risk assessment, where potential harms are identified and evaluated. When faced with pressure to compromise on quality or safety, professionals should advocate for adherence to established testing protocols and standards. They should be prepared to communicate the risks associated with premature launch and propose alternative solutions that balance innovation with responsibility. Maintaining open and honest communication with stakeholders, including management and regulatory bodies, is crucial. If internal pressures lead to unethical or non-compliant decisions, professionals should consider escalating the issue through appropriate channels or, in extreme cases, seeking external advice. Question 16. Market research demonstrates that a significant bottleneck exists in the final assembly stage of a key product line, leading to delays in order fulfillment. A proposal has been put forth to reassign a portion of the quality control inspectors to assist with assembly tasks during peak periods, with the rationale that this will increase overall throughput. Option A. Reduce the number of quality checks performed on the assembly line to expedite the process, assuming that the reallocated inspectors will compensate for any oversight. Option B. Conduct a pilot program to assess the impact of reassigning quality control inspectors on both assembly throughput and the rate of defects identified post-assembly, while also evaluating the potential for increased rework. Option C. Implement the reassignment of quality control inspectors based on the recommendation of the production floor supervisor, who believes it will significantly boost output. Option D. Immediately reassign quality control inspectors to assembly tasks to address the immediate bottleneck and improve order fulfillment times. The correct answer is B. Conduct a pilot program to assess the impact of reassigning quality control inspectors on both assembly throughput and the rate of defects identified post-assembly, while also evaluating the potential for increased rework. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the drive for efficiency with the need to maintain product quality and adhere to established operational standards, especially within a manufacturing context like Foxconn Industrial Internet. The pressure to optimize processes can lead to shortcuts that might compromise the integrity of the final product or violate internal quality control protocols. Careful judgment is required to identify optimizations that genuinely improve efficiency without negatively impacting output quality or compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven evaluation of proposed changes. This involves understanding the root cause of inefficiencies, exploring multiple solutions, and rigorously testing their impact on key performance indicators, including quality and throughput. This aligns with general principles of good manufacturing practice and continuous improvement methodologies, which are implicitly expected in a high-volume industrial setting. While specific regulations for this exam are not provided, the underlying ethical and professional expectation is to act responsibly and with due diligence, ensuring that improvements do not introduce new risks or degrade existing standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing labor costs without a thorough analysis of its impact on production speed and defect rates is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to increased rework, customer complaints, and potential reputational damage, which are all negative outcomes that a responsible professional would seek to avoid. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence or the opinion of a single influential individual without empirical validation disregards the importance of objective data in decision-making. This can lead to inefficient or even detrimental changes that are difficult to reverse and waste resources. A third incorrect approach that bypasses established quality assurance checks in the name of speed introduces significant risks of product defects and noncompliance with any implicit or explicit quality standards, which is a clear ethical and professional failing. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework when considering process optimization. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data, brainstorming potential solutions, evaluating each solution against defined criteria, including efficiency, quality, cost, and risk, selecting the most promising solution, implementing it with careful monitoring, and then reviewing the results to ensure sustained improvement. This iterative process ensures that optimizations are effective, sustainable, and aligned with organizational goals and ethical responsibilities. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that a key production line is experiencing recurring minor delays, impacting overall output targets. The team is under pressure to resolve this quickly. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation for sustainable process optimization? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the recurring delays, involving data collection on cycle times, equipment performance, and operator feedback, followed by a pilot implementation of proposed solutions and a phased rollout. Option B. Rely on the experience of the longest-serving operators to identify the most obvious bottlenecks and implement their suggested quick fixes without further investigation. Option C. Engage an external consulting firm to provide a rapid assessment and implement their standardized optimization package, focusing on immediate cost savings. Option D. Immediately reallocate resources from other less critical lines to compensate for the delays on the affected line, assuming the issue is temporary and will resolve itself with increased effort. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the recurring delays, involving data collection on cycle times, equipment performance, and operator feedback, followed by a pilot implementation of proposed solutions and a phased rollout. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in industrial settings: the tension between immediate production demands and the long-term benefits of process optimization. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing efficiency gains with potential disruptions, resource allocation, and the need for robust data-driven decision-making. Careful judgment is required to avoid short-sighted solutions that could lead to greater inefficiencies or compliance issues later. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-informed methodology for process optimization. This aligns with principles of continuous improvement and operational excellence, which are often implicitly or explicitly encouraged by industry best practices and regulatory frameworks focused on quality and efficiency. By conducting a thorough analysis, identifying root causes, and implementing solutions with pilot testing, it minimizes risk and maximizes the likelihood of sustainable improvements. This methodical approach also supports accountability and provides a clear audit trail, which is crucial in regulated environments. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on anecdotal evidence or immediate cost reduction without proper analysis fails to address the underlying issues. This can lead to superficial fixes that do not achieve true optimization and may even introduce new problems. Such an approach could be seen as negligent if it leads to a decline in product quality or an increase in waste, potentially violating internal quality standards or industry guidelines. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes without adequate testing or stakeholder buy-in risks significant disruption. This can lead to production downtime, increased error rates, and resistance from the workforce, negating any potential benefits. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the impact on employees and operational continuity. A further incorrect approach that relies on external consultants without internal validation or understanding of the specific operational context might lead to solutions that are not practical or sustainable for Foxconn's unique environment. While consultants can offer valuable insights, a lack of internal integration and ownership can result in a disconnect between the proposed solutions and their actual implementation and effectiveness. This can also represent a failure in due diligence and resource management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured problem-solving framework. This includes clearly defining the problem, gathering comprehensive data, analyzing root causes, developing and evaluating potential solutions, piloting the chosen solution, implementing it systematically, and continuously monitoring its performance. Collaboration with relevant teams and stakeholders throughout the process is also essential for successful adoption and sustained improvement. Question 18. Assessment of the most appropriate stakeholder engagement strategy for a new industrial EOT device, considering the regulatory framework and potential market pressures for rapid deployment, to ensure compliance and user safety. Option A. Conduct limited user testing with a small, familiar group of users, and prioritize speed to market over extensive validation of all potential operational scenarios. Option B. Expedite the product launch by relying on initial internal testing and assuming that any minor issues can be addressed through post-launch software updates. Option C. Focus marketing efforts on highlighting the device's innovative features and assume that regulatory compliance will be a secondary concern addressed as needed. Option D. Implement a phased rollout strategy, beginning with controlled pilot testing with select industrial partners to gather comprehensive performance data and identify potential compliance gaps before a full market launch. Correct answer is D. Implement a phased rollout strategy, beginning with controlled pilot testing with select industrial partners to gather comprehensive performance data and identify potential compliance gaps before a full market launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and market advantage, and the regulatory imperative to ensure product safety and compliance before widespread deployment. The pressure to be first to market can lead to shortcuts in testing and validation, potentially exposing consumers to risks and the company to significant legal and reputational damage. Balancing these competing interests requires a nuanced understanding of regulatory requirements and a commitment to ethical product stewardship. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes rigorous adherence to the Foxconn Industrial Internet Hiring Assessment Test specified regulatory framework, which likely emphasizes a phased approach to product development and deployment. This involves thorough internal testing, pilot programs with controlled user groups, and comprehensive risk assessments to identify and mitigate potential safety or compliance issues. This methodology ensures that the product meets all relevant standards and is safe for broader market release, thereby upholding the company's legal obligations and ethical responsibilities to its stakeholders, including end users and regulatory bodies. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of future recalls, lawsuits, and damage to brand reputation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed to market above all else, leading to the premature release of a product without adequate testing or validation. This directly violates the spirit and likely the letter of regulations designed to protect consumers and ensure fair market practices. Such an approach risks significant financial penalties, product recalls, and severe reputational damage, undermining long-term business sustainability. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on anecdotal feedback from a limited internal team for product validation. This is insufficient as it does not represent the diverse usage patterns and potential failure points that a broader customer base might encounter. Regulations typically require objective, data-driven evidence of product safety and efficacy, which anecdotal feedback cannot provide. This failure to conduct comprehensive testing can lead to unforeseen issues post-launch, resulting in regulatory noncompliance and consumer harm. A third incorrect approach is to interpret regulatory requirements loosely, assuming that minor deviations are acceptable in the pursuit of innovation. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the strict nature of regulatory compliance. Regulatory frameworks are designed with specific safety thresholds and procedural requirements that must be met without compromise. Such a lax interpretation can lead to significant legal repercussions and a loss of trust from both consumers and regulators. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context must adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the applicable regulatory landscape as defined by the Foxconn Industrial Internet Hiring Assessment Test. 2. Identifying potential risks associated with product development and deployment at each stage. 3. Implementing robust testing and validation protocols to mitigate identified risks. 4. Engaging in continuous monitoring and feedback loops post-launch to address any emerging issues. 5. Maintaining open and transparent communication with all stakeholders, including regulatory bodies. This systematic approach ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and ethically, safeguarding both the company and its customers. Question 19. Comparative studies suggest that rapid deployment of new industrial internet platforms can sometimes lead to overlooked data security vulnerabilities. In the context of Foxconn Industrial Internet's operations, if a project team is under pressure to launch a new data analytics module for a key client, what is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure compliance with data protection principles and regulatory expectations? Option A. Expedite the deployment by delegating the data security review to a junior team member with minimal oversight to save time. Option B. Rely on the assumption that the client's existing data security infrastructure is adequate and therefore no additional internal review is necessary. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment and review existing data handling protocols against current regulatory requirements before deployment. Option D. Proceed with the deployment and address any identified data security issues reactively as they arise during the initial operational phase. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment and review existing data handling protocols against current regulatory requirements before deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial pressures of a company and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning data privacy and security. Foxconn Industrial Internet, operating within the framework of relevant industrial and technology regulations, assuming a primary jurisdiction like China or a similar regulatory environment for its operations, must balance its operational needs with its duty to protect sensitive stakeholder data. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with data handling practices that could inadvertently lead to breaches or noncompliance, especially when under pressure to deliver on projects. The correct approach, focusing on proactive risk assessment and adherence to established data governance policies, represents best professional practice. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate robust data protection measures, such as those found in data privacy laws requiring organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard personal data. Ethically, it upholds the principle of responsible data stewardship and builds trust with stakeholders. By prioritizing a thorough review of data handling protocols and ensuring compliance with internal policies and external regulations, the company demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and operational integrity. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness in data handling would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. For instance, bypassing established data anonymization procedures or neglecting to conduct a data protection impact assessment before deploying new systems could violate data privacy laws. Such actions expose the company to legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of stakeholder trust. Another incorrect approach, such as assuming existing security measures are sufficient without verification, ignores the dynamic nature of cyber threats and regulatory expectations, leading to potential vulnerabilities and noncompliance. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the evolving landscape of data security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes identifying potential data-related risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. Professionals should always consult relevant internal policies and external regulations, seeking legal and compliance advice when uncertainties arise. Prioritizing transparency, accountability, and stakeholder interests is paramount, even when faced with operational pressures. A culture of continuous improvement in data governance and security practices is essential. Question 20. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in the collection of employee keystroke data and screen activity logs. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible data handling and employee privacy within the context of the Foxconn Industrial Internet Hiring Assessment Tests implied regulatory framework? Option A. Implement a policy that clearly communicates the purpose of the monitoring to employees, limits data collection to what is necessary for performance analysis and security, and ensures data is used only for these stated purposes with appropriate safeguards. Option B. Share aggregated, anonymized keystroke and screen activity data with external market research firms to identify industry productivity trends. Option C. Utilize the collected data to create detailed individual performance profiles that are accessible to all employees for peer review and comparison. Option D. Expand the monitoring to include personal device usage on company networks to gain a more comprehensive understanding of employee time management. The correct answer is A. Implement a policy that clearly communicates the purpose of the monitoring to employees, limits data collection to what is necessary for performance analysis and security, and ensures data is used only for these stated purposes with appropriate safeguards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of data privacy and regulatory compliance. The core tension lies in how to leverage the insights gained from monitoring employee activity without infringing upon their rights or violating established legal frameworks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the monitoring serves its intended purpose without becoming overly intrusive or creating a hostile work environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and adherence to the Foxconn Industrial Internet Hiring Assessment Tests implied regulatory framework, which would likely align with general principles of data protection and employee rights. This approach involves clearly communicating the purpose and scope of the monitoring to employees, obtaining informed consent where applicable, and ensuring that the data collected is used solely for legitimate business purposes, such as performance improvement and security. This aligns with ethical considerations of respect for individuals and legal requirements for data handling. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing data collection for performance metrics without clear communication or consent would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data privacy laws by collecting more information than necessary or using it for unauthorized purposes. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of respect for employee autonomy and privacy, potentially leading to a breach of trust and a negative impact on morale. Another incorrect approach that involves sharing collected data with third parties without explicit consent or a legal basis would also be a serious regulatory and ethical breach. This could expose sensitive employee information to unauthorized access or misuse, leading to legal repercussions and reputational damage. It violates the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to responsible data management. A third incorrect approach that involves using the monitoring data for punitive actions without a clear, predefined policy and due process would be ethically problematic and potentially legally unsound. While monitoring can identify performance issues, disciplinary actions must be based on objective evidence and follow established procedures to ensure fairness and prevent arbitrary decisions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-step approach. 1. Understand the specific regulatory framework applicable to the jurisdiction and the nature of the data being collected. 2. Clearly define the legitimate business purpose for the monitoring. 3. Develop a transparent policy that outlines the scope, methods, and purpose of the monitoring and communicate it effectively to all employees. 4. Obtain informed consent where required by law or best practice. 5. Implement robust data security measures to protect the collected information. 6. Establish clear guidelines for the use and retention of the data, ensuring it is used only for the stated purposes. 7. Regularly review and audit the monitoring system and its data usage to ensure ongoing compliance and ethical conduct.